the Denver office. Rick won't be joining us today. He's out of the office, but we're just waiting for a few other folks to join us, and then we will get started. So thanks so much for logging in. In the Denver office, Rick won't be joining us today. He's out of the office, but we have a fun agenda for finishing up the stakeholder mapping. There will still be a few people kind of trickling in on the line, but we're going to go ahead and get started because we still have quite a bit to cover. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us, and please unmute yourself and speak up during this presentation.
Great. Hi, everyone. This is Leo speaking. Just quickly, I don't know if everyone was here last week or not, but I'll just give a super fast summary of what we did. We are working on taking sort of a list of stakeholders involved in the early childhood ecosystem, and we are mapping them out. This document that I have open is our existing stakeholder map that we started last week. So you can see sort of the players involved in the ecosystem. And we're trying to capture a simple mindset for each one of them, and specifically kind of within the context of how they might use the EC Connect tool, or how they function within the EC Connect sub-ecosystem here, which is in the center. And then we're going to draw connections between them. And I've taken various notes. Last time we got, I think we were sort of, when we got to the end of the meeting, we were working on internal and external coaches. So I think that is where we want to pick up today. So a great place to start. Let's see. Maybe I'll zoom us back out, and I'll look at someone like QI Navigator as an example of what we did last week to kind of remind us and get our brains flowing. So the QI Navigator is sort of situated between licensed providers and informal care providers potentially, and then the early childhood councils and the application and tools. Their mindset is going to be something like, I need to know everything for my caseload of providers. I am the go-to and expert for providers. And so that's kind of what they're thinking. The notes that we have is that they are aware of funding streams, they're aware of qualified purchase rules, they assist with purchasing, they help level 1 and higher, so they support level 1 institutions and help with higher level as needed. They provide technical support for all of the various databases and tools in the Wild West of early childhood care, and then they help align providers with QIS funds. Great. They do outreach and recruitment and recording of that. They back enter weird invoices, which is something we're going to look into at some point or another here. And then lastly, they are varied in role as the primary contact between councils. Sometimes they fill that role as well. So that's an example of kind of what we're trying to get to. And I think the place where we want to pick up is internal and external coaches. Maybe we start with the internal coaches. And so far we have that they work in a variety of locations. It's kind of neat sometimes to get some information about where these people are doing their daily work. So we'll try to include that when we can. That we have that they're employed by various early childhood councils, compared to external coaches who are contracted. The internal coaches track their hours, or are tracked in hours. They kind of transact in hours. And then they are only tracking what they want to get back out, which is a really important thing for both of these two stakeholders. So could anyone help me maybe get just a quick one-liner of what an internal coach might be thinking in regards to their daily job, and particularly as it pertains to recording data, their recording requirements? You can either we can either chat in, or if you are connected through the voice means, by all means, I can start it with something like, you know, I want to track my hours without diverting face time away from my clients, something like that.
So is everybody on the phone with us? Can we have some folks chime in over the phone or chat in? Another thing, if there are bullets that are missing, like for example, we might want to add that coaches are critical partners in developing the QIP goals and entering those.
This is Phil from Office of Early Childhood. Just going to make use of the phone here and say I'm not exactly sure what an internal coach would say since I'm not with a council area. I think the councils there will have more to say to that.
Well, thank you, Phil, for breaking the phone silence.
Yep. No problem.
It sounds like Stacy Petty is chatting in. I want to track my hours in one place. So, you know, I think I want to track my hours in one place and have easy access to key info, maybe, about my sites. Mandy's saying easily track hours or anything more than hours. Stacy said, coaches help programs decide on what materials will improve quality the most. So maybe under the QIP goals bullet, we can put in another bullet that Stacy said, which is help programs decide on what purchases will improve quality the most. So maybe prioritizing spending.
Yeah, that's probably a succinct way to do it. Prioritizing spending. Spending for maximum impact.
So for those on the phone, maybe we could get everybody to either chat in or speak up. How many councils have their coaches really responsible for helping assist QIP goal generation with providers versus the QI navigator, or do you just rely on the child care sites to do that themselves? So type in coaches if they're the ones who primarily work on QIPs, navigators if they're the primary, or sites if they're the primary.
This is Stacy. For us, it's a mixture because we cover 4 counties. So it kind of depends on the needs of the program and how much support they need. Some of them can do their QIP goals themselves and they're great. Others can work with our navigator and you know, they just need a little help. And then there's some who need some face-to-face time with their coach.
Great. So Denver is also that way. Oh, is somebody trying to speak? We cannot hear you, if that is the case.
This is Sam Walker. Can you hear me?
We can hear like a whisper of you, but can't really hear you. Oh, I heard you a little better for the huh.
Okay, this is Sam Walker.
Great.
And on my screen, I'm not getting a full screen and I can't use your chat box.
Oh, you know, I think it's probably that the GoToMeeting menu bar is shrunk down. So if you can find where the GoToMeeting little icon menu is, then you should be able to expand that for the chat feature. I'm sorry, I wish we were there in person.
Exactly where would I look for this?
Flash media. Sorry, I'm breaking your thing.
Sorry, I think we have somebody who's not muted. Okay, there we go. Okay, Stacy is saying if she clicks on the chat balloon, it will expand it. So do you have a chat balloon?
Should be on the right side.
Should be on the right-hand side. But in any case, Pam, if you just want to speak into the phone, then I will read all the chats that come in, so you won't be missing anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Sharon Pendergast is saying that XPAC coaches also want providers to see what they are supposed to be working on in between coaching visits. Okay, that's a great other bullet. So coaches want their coachees, clients, I don't know what we want to call them, to be able to see next steps or maybe recommendations. Oh, good. And Pan is now able to access the chat. That's great. It looks like we have one other. Heather is saying we only have one person, a QI-NAV coach. She supports QIP development for sites and home providers. Great. So I just was curious about that because the QIP is going to be something that we're really working on refining over the next few months in partnership with OEC and all of you to make it more actionable and to think about it more in terms of SMART, clear goals, which are acronyms. And so, you know, we would really like to get coaches very involved in that conversation. So I was just taking this as an opportunity to talk through that a little bit. We will be covering this at the ECLA membership meeting. I'm not sure when on the agenda it is, but we'll be going through kind of what exists currently with QIPs and maybe some ideas to make them better. Okay, so is everyone feeling like this is capturing everything about internal coaches? I know one other thing in our council is that sometimes internal coaches are also responsible for developing and performing training, which is kind of outside the coach role, but it's something that they're also responsible for. I don't know if that's something we want to add. Does anyone else have their coaches perform trainings?
So, Sharon, that for sure in Larimer that would be true. There's a number of other things that we have our coaches involved in that also is not currently being tracked in Sugar. Because of that, that is causing us to do double tracking of data.
Great.
To be able to do our cost allocations. So.
Would you mind kind of talking through some of those types of activities and whether or not you could envision a place for that to be tracked within the EC Connect Sugar system? If that would be a desire, I guess.
Right. Yeah. You know, in our case, we have them attend particular meetings that allows them to either learn about other agencies. Network is a huge component of that. And then serve on committees that are called by, say, community partners. So they sit on advisory boards for each of our school districts. One person serves on a couple of a different advisory board to another entity.
So it sounds like that's in the realm of systems building and relationship building, kind of informing systems level decisions. Is there a way that we could write that concisely? Because absolutely we would like to track systems building level activities and indicators within Sugar. I know that's an ECLA board priority. So if there's a way we can concisely put that in here, I think that would be great.
Yeah, and so in terms of that, I think it really depends on what level you're going to try to take that data down to, because it could be as simple as allowing us to have an account in Sugar that allows us to do coaching details or whatever you want to call what you're tracking. But it could be that we could look at that coaching detail record and figure out, can you use that same sort of thing for multiple purposes, so you're not having to have lots of different things in Sugar to collect the data too, because I need that I need that all together so when I do cost allocation, because I would say that right now I can track about, or my, the staff are tracking about 75% of their time. That's got 25% that I have to cost allocate some way based on what they actually captured. So staff meetings is another thing. And that's whole staff meetings. I've got team meetings, and I do one-on-one meetings with every single one of our coaches. So,
well, and actually that kind of goes to the reflective supervision requirements for coaches, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what a fair amount of that is, although one of our team meetings a month is certainly about stuff.
Yeah. So actually, we are going to be looking at the coaching logs and trying to make them a little bit more versatile. I know we have some needs around mental health consultation tracking and some other types of professional services that maybe aren't kind of classic coaching, but are still the same kind of activity from a tracking standpoint. So absolutely we'll want to get you involved in that process. But for now, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's one more category, sorry to jump in there, and that is that all of the professional development that they are either required to do or is helpful for them to do in their job.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we were hoping to really leverage PDIS and kind of the credential tracking and PD tracking in PDIS. I think now that we've had to no longer pursue the integration with PDIS, it kind of changes the landscape a little bit. So it's possible that we could actually track those professional development requirements and certifications within Sugar on the coach's contact record.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about what it is. I'm worried about the amount of time that is expended doing it. So, for instance, our staff did almost 800 hours of professional development last year. That's a significant amount that needs to be captured. It's not a small amount that is really unnewsworthy. It's a newsworthy and track amount of time.
Yeah.
So that's over 100 hours per person.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's about 125 hours a person.
So if Leo's capturing this here, so systems building activities, internal logistics, maybe instead of just PD time, could you put in required
and there's the required level, and there's the ones that they would like to do because it fills them personally.
Mm-hmm. And additional PD maybe, and related time. Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but our council, we have kind of a somewhat extensive process for requesting and approving PD, especially if it's out of state for our internal staff. So I don't know if that's something we'd be interested in trying to put into Sugar, or if you guys feel like you have good processes already in place. I know that's something that, we don't struggle with managing, but there's a lot of paperwork kind of associated with it. I don't know if you have similar experiences.
You guys are probably the ones most likely to be at that level. We haven't had to go there yet, so. But we don't do a lot. We definitely don't do a lot of out-of-state stuff is extremely rare. One of us will make one trip this year.
Okay. Okay.
Well, do we want to maybe move a little bit diagonally down over here to the external coach and maybe really focus on what the differences are and how these interactions might be varied from the internal coach? I imagine their mindsets are probably pretty similar.
This is Sharon Pendergast. I'm sorry, I just had one quick thing that I think is important to note about internal coaches, and it's probably important to note about external coaches as well, but that all of the tracking that they're doing in Sugar for our coaches is outside of their coaching. So unlike a QIN who is sometimes sitting at their computer logging the information as they're doing the tasks, coaches are doing their tasks and then coming back and logging everything in.
I would agree that that's our situation as well.
And do you want to elaborate on that a little bit, if it is something that is that they're doing that really intentionally because they want to not have the computer or the tablet at the site, or if it's sort of like an inconvenience right now because of the way the coaching log is set up, in thinking about future state, you know, how could that be set up in a different way to maybe encourage more real-time activities, or even just logging your coaching immediately following that visit so it's fresh and top of mind, so scheduling your coaching so that you've got that time in between meetings. Maybe we could talk through that a little bit.
For ECPAC, it's kind of twofold. One is that coaches believe that they're there to be developing relationships, not doing sort of administrative tasks. And then also because often there is no way for them to get internet connections while they're at sites.
So if there were the possibility of an offline coaching log, and we're not promising this at this time, but if that were a possibility, is that something that would be in high demand, do you feel like?
I think it'd be worth asking councils in a bigger way than represented on this call.
Okay.
And perhaps it may be, you know, I can say, I could say, no, they need to do that. But my coaches spend a lot of time out of the office, and that is an opportunity for them to be here. And I kind of like that too.
So the idea that their data entry phase is in the office, and that's nice because then you can kind of connect with them, that's a good thing that you like.
You're right. I think there's good and bad both ways. So
yeah. Yeah.
So is this a matter of at some point, I mean, our council is going to be able to individually make that choice of the when, or
it's absolutely.
and then if people are choosing that they want the more timely entry, you know, right after the visit, is that we run into these issues that I think it was Sharon mentioned.
Right, and really they're recording during the coaching visit on something else, and then they're transferring that into Sugar.
Yeah, and so I think that only from a policy standpoint, you know, certainly councils and coaches can all make their own decisions on that. There may or may not be requirements on how frequently that needs to happen. You know, I think generally monthly, as it relates to our grant invoices, is sort of the standard perspective. But you know, I think where I guess like the business process improvement part of us kind of feels like there could be some opportunities to reduce that duplicated effort of, you know, writing your notes on a piece of paper and then having to go back a week or two later and entering it into a system. People don't like to do that, generally speaking. And so we're trying to kind of shift into a mentality where the database is not the enemy and it's just a tool that is used during practice. And so you think about institutions like Kaiser Permanente, where all of their doctors have a computer screen. There's actually studies about them. They have a computer screen, and they still, you know, it's off to the side, and so they're still able to have that eye contact with their patients, and they can record actively into the universal health record, and that improves kind of the whole experience and the record-keeping side of it, as well as the relationship side. So just wanting us to think about what really are our goals here. One of the major goals is that we want coaches to be happy with the system they have, and we don't want them to be annoyed that they have to go back and enter in data later. So however we achieve that, I think there are different approaches to that, but if we could all think about that, I think that would be helpful.
And also, what are the outputs that they could be receiving from that system that makes it worth their while to do so?
Yeah,
I think that's a key thing right there, because I'm not sure they're in general feeling they're getting something that's meaningful to them right now. And is that a training issue, or is that what's in there?
There is a cost issue that we absolutely have to consider. There are councils that are losing a lot of money. None of my coaches have their own computers. Mine are all external. We don't provide computers for them, and we don't provide tablets. And also, the more time I have my coaches, which I have very few, the more time, right now we're putting the information in for them, just the hours and things, and we collect all of their documentation and save it. Now, it might be easier to do it other ways, but that is reasonably priced for us, because I have someone on staff that I pay to do a lot of the things, and what they're doing is coaching and turning in their coaching packets. And it's not going to get better financially. So I think you can create another Cadillac model here that's not going to be able to be used.
Okay, that's a great insight, and it kind of sounds like what Stacy Petty chatted in. She said, we created a log that has all of the fields that they have to enter, and then our navigator is entering coaching logs because we had so many problems with mistakes. It takes my navigator about 3 minutes per entry versus all the time it took to verify everything. And so I think that the answer also is different if you have in-house coaches who are your staff, and you can have clear expectations and provide laptops and that kind of thing, versus external coaches where you have less control over what they do. And if it's easier for you to get a log from them and then record that in your system, absolutely, that is your policy decision to make. And so, you know, I do wonder, though, if that's one of the major differences between external coaches and internal coaches, is that, you know, as we are hiring our staff and thinking about what our council goals are, there might be different trainings and expectations that are provided to our internal staff versus external contracted coaches.
I just put that accountability piece in there because I thought that was really good.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
and then, Lisa,
the
go ahead.
supervision and all of these external people is really dictated.
Right. I'm just going to read a few of the other chats. Let's see. So Tim is saying, are we considering creating a hierarchy of needs, activities, and indicators? What goals asked are high priority and what goals asked are secondary? If we identify these goals, tasks clearly, we will avoid duplicate entry. This is the evaluation component, but it heavily informs the database design. It sounds like we want an excellent user experience. Evaluation database design will benefit from this identification of hierarchy of needs. So, Tim, please feel free to unmute yourself and say this out loud if it's helpful. But yes, that is one of the goals of having Annette's team at Research Evaluation Consulting review all of this information. She's going to be looking very closely at coaching logs and the quality improvement plan process. And really recommend actually removing fields where we can so that we can simplify the entry process, and really getting inputting the data that is going to be meaningful in providing a good output beyond just counting number of hours and a lot of other fields that may or may not be useful when we're actually evaluating progress on the actual activities. So that is certainly something we will be looking at as a large group. Anything you want to add to that, Tim? Okay. It sounds like Chrissy is saying we enter our external coaching hours similar to what Stacy Petty said, created a coaching summary form they submit for the navigator to enter. It is more efficient and reduces mistakes. So, so why don't we say for external coaches that these are often entered by ECC navigators, tracked on paper and entered. Yeah, that's good. I guess Tim tried to talk, but he must be muted. Sorry, Tim. Okay, great. Anything else we want to add for external coaches or internal coaches before we move on?
I just put the same mindset. Is there like a one-liner that expresses their mindset differently than internal coaches, or it's probably going to be pretty much the same? We could go into like details about, you know, getting between their sessions and.
I think one thing that we actually didn't cover, and I don't know if this is critically important to coaches, but we've always sort of thought it was, that it's important for coaches to be able to understand their caseload, meaning the number of hours they've been assigned and what sites they're assigned to. Do others feel like coaches really like having that information so that they can easily run a report and see how many hours they're responsible for and kind of plan out their time?
This is Stacy. What our external coaches, what we've done is after we process all of our billing for the month, we pulled together a report for each of my counties that has what programs QI dollars are and what their coaching hours that are left are, so that coaches feel very much in the loop. And that way we don't run into problems of people spending, you know, more time at a site than what we have allocated to them. And
Great.
It's all in one place.
Yeah, how could we capture that?
So basically they need to know their assigned and remaining balances for coaching hours, and also it's interesting for them to see assigned and remaining balances for QI dollars as well. That would be true really for both types.
Yeah, that's not something specific for QI dollars and hours.
Yep. And Stacey, are your external coaches, they just don't have a sugar license right now?
They do, but honestly, we kind of gave up on training them how to use the system, because every time they got in there, they mucked something up that it took us a while to fix.
Yep.
So we found it was just far easier for us to do it for them.
Yep.
That's why I'm excited about having the coaching log be something in EC Connect that's more user-friendly and straightforward, because then I'll shift inputting coaching back to our coaches.
Great.
Good. That's good to hear.
That's good to hear.
Well, great. Do we want to maybe move on to vendors? Vendors is probably another.
Yeah, that sounds good. And just one quick thing, Mandy's chatted in. Yes, although we need to teach them to run the reports themselves. So maybe in their coaching dashboard, they might have some frequently used reports that they could draw on them for themselves.
If that's possible, I think it'd be great. I think for us, though, we have 4 counties and 10 coaches, and it's just been easier for us to pull that information together and give it out to everybody. So it'd be good to have the flexibility for them to do it or for us to do it.
Great.
Fantastic.
I think it'd be nice to ask coaches what it is they want, and then for us to be able to say, did you know you could have, in case they're not thinking about it.
Yeah, I think one thing we're trying to do is possibly get on the agenda of a coaching consortium meeting, and also just pull, kind of poll and pull together as many coach opinions about this as possible. So many of you have been invited to an interview with Leo later this week or this next week. And so if you know of any coaches where he would be welcome to observe their coaching or interview them, just let him know, and he can get that scheduled as well.
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
So the coaching consortium, I'm wondering if you might be better served to go to a coach's quarterly meeting, because the coaching consortium is typically people that are more in what you would call the ivory tower and not people actually doing the work.
Okay, I think that's a fair assessment.
Although at least one of the people on the coaching consortium is one of my best coaches.
Well, maybe they've got a wonderful seat in the ivory tower of coaching.
That is possible.
And I think they could be a sole voice is the challenge. That might not be true now, but in general, the folks on the ground doing the heavy coaching are not on as part of the consortium itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they talk more about theory, right, than
Much
practice.
more. Yeah.
Okay.
Which we need those people too.
Great.
Great. Well, let's start working on a mindset for vendors for QI dollars, vendors transacting in QI dollars for academic educational supplies. They might say, I want to receive requests for my products in QI dollars. There's probably a much better way to say that. Anyone have any ideas of what a vendor might be expecting to receive?
I think, to be really blunt, I think that vendors primarily are thinking, I want to be paid in a timely manner.
Right, sure.
I don't know what others think about that, but this is not always easy.
I think that it helps with the EC Connect system, ideally, that they're getting all the information they need to be able to fulfill orders correctly, and also get their money too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a difference between kind of the preferred vendor category and all other vendors, in that preferred vendors have really demonstrated a commitment to early childhood by providing significant discounts, free shipping, great terms. So I don't know if that is worth putting in here, but I think there really are two classes of vendors. And one of those classes really has demonstrated a commitment that is very high to our work.
Is there going to be a place on this particular document where it shows kind of the back and forth between the councils and the vendors as far as ordering, where maybe that might come into play?
Yeah, so we'll be presenting the connections, right, between vendors and ECCs, and so we'll see lines that kind of show from the Early Childhood Council EC Connect system, the order is sent to the vendor, and then the vendor sends the invoice, and then in between that, we're verifying the order and pre-approving and all of that stuff.
Yes. Really figure out how to.
And while Leo's looking at that, there have been some chats. So Tim has a very big chat. Sounds like the councils have lots of concerns about the amount of time it takes to track data. The evaluation should really help identify what is priority to track and secondary. I've seen councils in the past confuse community ask or stakeholder funder ask as priority ask. These might be a priority for a specific council, but it might not be necessarily priority for all councils. The evaluators should really look in how much crossover data goals ask tracking could exist among the 30 councils. I do believe they will put great focus on this overlap. And yes, that is true. This way we can streamline data entry and hopefully reduce some data entry for staff. We should also be able to sort our goals asked by geographic areas. Rural areas might have common asks that are different than urban. So yeah, I think we can even design reports and things like that, you know, to meet some of those needs. Mandy is saying it would be nice to see a chat between councils and vendors, for example, back-ordered or damaged goods, that a coach can go in and see the status of them. So I do want to just put out a notice. I think people know this. I think we've announced this, but basically the marketplace app concept in our original RFP for the EC Connect enhancements is currently on hold. The state needed to recoup $100,000 from our EC Connect budget that was earmarked for the PDIS integration, which we are not proceeding with. And so what may occur is after June 30th, if there are Race to the Top funds still available between July 1st and September 30th, we may be able to put that project back online, the marketplace project. And that marketplace will specifically address Mandy's question, where there is a vendor portal and the council and the vendor can actually interact with each other and with clients, you know, providers who are submitting orders as part of a marketplace concept. Now, right now, there's very limited functionality within Sugar, but it does automatically send some emails that, you know, I think we're all pretty familiar with. But any chat, you know, outside of that needs to happen, you know, in regular email at this point. So I just wanted to set the clear expectation that we are really, unless we can go forward with the marketplace project, we won't be looking at as closely at kind of the spending and vendor relationship side, but we are in this discovery phase. We're still collecting information about that, but we won't be able to act on it unless we do get some additional funds to do that. And I know that in the event that we don't have Race to the Top funds, that's something that ECLA is interested in fundraising for specifically. So, so it may not be right now, but it could be in the future. So does that make sense to everyone? Okay, yes, good. Thanks, Mandy. And then Chrissy chatted in, bullet idea, increasing preferred vendors and those who are connecting to their website for easy spending. Yes, I agree with that idea, Chrissy. And they are listed as preferred vendors on EC Connect already, and then everybody else is listed as other vendors. So hopefully the preferred vendors are getting some good attention.
So what was the second part of that? And increasing preferred vendors.
And those who are connected to their website for easy spending. So maybe even increasing the visibility on EC Connect with those preferred vendors, yeah. Which we could do that. That would be part of scope. Hey, anything else about vendors?
Great. Well, so we have a sideboard that has quite a few additional people, and at this point I'll kind of open it up. We can go ahead and try to go through the process for all of these additional people, and we might get through most of them. Alternatively, we can go ahead and start connecting up the ecosystem that we have, which maybe makes more sense, and then I can work with Sharon and Rick to get those last players put in place. So maybe it makes most sense to start connecting.
That sounds good to me. What does everyone think on the call? And we can share out basically a draft version, and then if there are things we want to tweak, you know, we could likely do that within a set time frame. All right, that sounds good.
Great. Just super quickly, let's see if we can spend about 2 minutes on each and come up with a mindset for licensed providers and informal care, because we kind of skipped informal care, and I think that's also probably an important thing to talk about. But let's try to be mindful of wanting to get some connections done too. Good. All right. So, can we quickly come up with licensed care providers mindset. It would be something like, I want to receive a better rating level.
Leo's looking at me, but I'm looking at all of you, even though you can't see me. Please chat in or speak up what the mindset could be for a licensed provider.
I want to be recognized as important in the child care industry.
Ooh. Heather says, I want my program to be high quality. So maybe we could add, I want to be recognized as important and high quality in the child care industry. Chrissy says, what funding and resources are available to my program? So the child care provider wants to know what funding and resources are available.
Great. I need a bigger bubble.
They actually want lots of things. Tim is saying, I want coaching support to improve my quality and community recognition. And Leo, just heads up, we save all the chats in these GoToMeetings, so we can actually, even if we don't capture everything right this second,
I was wondering that.
we can, please chat in as much as you can, and then we will look at the chat and make sure that it lines up with the final drawing.
Great. All right. Okay. So that's probably good. If we have maybe one or two bullets you want to add? Anything there? It's okay if not.
They are responsible for getting their workforce registered in PDIS. And updating their profile in Colorado Shines minimally.
There are families who prefer a licensed home provider. Is this a licensed home or just licensed providers in general?
All licensed providers, so homes and
centers. Okay.
Do you want to break out homes versus centers?
I don't know if we need to. I just wanted to make sure that I gave feedback that was pertinent.
Great.
Great.
This is Karen. I'm sorry I dropped off for a minute. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the challenge is when we just say early learning, that doesn't resonate with everyone out there. Intentionally or unintentionally, children are learning from us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And but some people do associate themselves more with the word care than.
Yeah, so I think the official
like Colorado
learning,
Shines, something like that.
Yeah, the official Colorado Shines lingo is early learning program, actually. And then industry across councils is usually providers or sites. And then lots of other people say early care and education. So which one do we want to use? ECE? Is that pretty universal?
C is care and not childhood.
Early care and learning program. So we could just say licensed care versus informal care, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I have that noted, so
okay.
we don't have to worry about that right now.
Which we end up with a lot fewer of soon.
Licensed or unlicensed?
Oh, yeah.
Licensed home providers.
Yeah.
Yeah, fewer with this new bill.
Yeah, this bill is definitely going to run that risk.
Yeah. Well, actually, then maybe we can switch to informal care and talking through that stakeholder group, especially if many people will be, unfortunately, put in that position, sounds like.
I think it's important to note in licensed care between centers and homes that often the language is center-centric. And I think sometimes that is alienating to licensed child care homes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so homes may be alienated by center terminology and expectations, really, right? Because sometimes homes are held to similar expectations as centers, even though they're completely different, right?
Well, and even centers can get put off by the very heavy Head Start language.
Yeah.
Well, and
But
I
anyway.
think that thinking is reinforced by the fact that historically homes haven't had to step up to the same standards as centers. They haven't been overseen in the same way. So they think that they are seen as less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is kind of a conversation, you know, that we don't have to have with our developer at Open Media Foundation, but I think that, you know, the Sugar Advisory Group or Data and Evaluation Committee or both, if we could come together and develop a glossary of what terminology we want to use to be very friendly and inclusive on the EC Connect portal, and we actually post that glossary in EC Connect, I think that will really go a long way in a lot of these kind of recurring themes or issues that sometimes come up that are really just around language. So is that something that we would be interested in doing? This would be outside
I
of
like
our...
that a lot.
Sorry, say that again?
I like that a lot.
Great. Okay, so I'll check in with Rick and I'll have him coordinate a meeting that's specific to that.
And this is Phil. I love glossaries and definitions. I think that always helps get people on the same page, even if you're just saying this is how we're using these terms, and it may not apply in all situations or you know, combined.
Oh, fellow lexicon geeks, I love it.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well,
love it.
you know, and hearing some of the discussion that you guys are going through right now, you know, I've done some licensing analyses, and yeah, you know, home providers have steadily been drastically decreasing in number over the past 10 years or so, whereas centers and preschools in particular have stayed relatively the same in terms of number of providers, but they've gotten significantly larger. So actually more children are I don't know if they're actually being served in those facilities, those center types, but you know, it speaks to what you were talking about earlier with, you know, the center centric language that's used sort of, I can imagine, at least from regulatory entities such as where I'm sitting,
Yep.
but you know, that's I think not the most reflective approach to the field as a whole.
And it's also because it's easier if you want to get high numbers in research to go where you have high numbers of children in one place versus having to go to all of these other sites. So we have far more research on centers too.
Yeah,
Well,
well, I think we all
often-
have a vision of EC Connect being very inclusive. I know that, you know, we have an informal care program here, and, you know, we ran it completely outside of EC Connect because EC Connect is really not set up for people who are not part of the formal process and all of the diligence that goes into, you know, being a licensed provider. And so, you know, really designing EC Connect with those who are not part of the big, they're not just, you know, cogs in a big system, but they're, you know, a little bit more unique, is going to be a really important goal of this process.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll
Yeah, because
include
often
the glossary
Hold on.
functionality of the high needs items.
Okay, sorry. I think somebody was trying to talk as well. Go ahead.
Go ahead, as in them
I'm going to
or
type my thought.
Okay, I think we got it. So informal care providers, what are they thinking now that we have had this nice conversation?
Well, they might not be, I can say they might not be thinking that I want to become a licensed
Yeah, you know, actually, Stacy is saying that they might feel left out of funding opportunities.
Feel left out.
Because some informal care providers do want to kind of go on pre-licensing and become licensed, but a lot of informal caregivers do not want to become licensed for their own reasons. Stacy's saying, why should I become licensed? That's a good thought bubble.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Anything else they might be thinking or doing? Yeah, so maybe as a bullet, some informal care cannot become licensed.
This is Pam Walker. I'm sorry I couldn't get my mute undone. But we had money for 3 years from Head Start for an early Head Start sort of kinship care program, and we used the model of we had reflective supervision for the folks who were doing the kin care, and we brought them into our center and had lunch and socialization and training for them, and child care for the children that they cared for. And it was a wonderful project, and they liked it a lot because I think they're very isolated and didn't realize there were other people who had the same issues they did. And one of the things that struck us was oftentimes it was family, and their children would take advantage of them. They just drop the children off, and then they wouldn't come back till 10 o'clock at night. And yet in other occasions, they had great relationships, you know, with their children who were leaving child care, and they were so happy to be able to have their grandchildren. But these are all very low-income people that we work with because of, you know, being an early Head Start program. Not one of the 32 became licensed, and often it was because it was prohibitive for them. Their facilities could not be licensed. They were living in situations that were not going to work. And one did have a home, and the Early Head Start program paid for a fence, but then they changed their mind. So, you know, maybe it's because of the income status of those folks that I thought it was successful in helping them and giving them, you know, more information about child development, safer homes. But if the goal was to get them licensed, which wasn't the primary goal here, we weren't real successful in that part.
Yeah, so maybe instead of the question bubble, why should I become licensed, maybe it's should I become licensed, and what resources are available to me as an informal care provider. Does that feel more inclusive?
I think it does, and you know, there's some people who probably really want to, and you're going to, you know, out there these days, it's not just very low-income people doing it. That's why I was qualified. But I think there are other needs. There are people who really need child development information, personal support, maybe consultation from mental health sources at their site, things like that that could improve the quality of care.
So maybe something like as a bullet, they need access to professional or peer network opportunities. Something. And then it looks like we're getting some other comments around, I need help navigating becoming licensed and funds to accomplish this. So maybe pre-licensing assistance could be needed. Under the licensed, let's see, somewhere I think we should say it can be too difficult or complicated to become licensed, or it just might not work circumstantially.
Okay.
I think somewhere we have something like
that.
Yeah. Some cannot become licensed, or it's prohibitively complicated. And then maybe we could just put in a note, and just for our own notes, that the Early Head Start EHS model might be useful in looking at for best practices.
This is Pam again. It was a competitive grant, and each of us who applied had our own model, and
Okay.
we used the Bank Street model. So that would be something that people would look into, and it's more of a social work model where you're really building relationships with the providers and understanding what they need from their perspective.
Great. Can you say that word again? Bankston, is that what you said, model?
It's called Bank Street College in New York City.
Bank Street.
Bank Street.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. It's a little hard to hear you, Pam, but that's perfect. Thank you. Bank Street. Perfect. Good. Okay, great. Anything else on informal care?
Great. Well, let's draw some connections. This is kind of, the goal is that we're going to put some arrows between them, and I'm going to try to draw and write what that connection is. So maybe we're going to see a connection between families and children, and maybe they're going to be connected to their teacher, their child's teacher. Let's see, what would be a connecting line, like maybe parent-teacher conferences. Something like that. So we're going to talk about, we're going to connect these things, we're going to talk about what the avenues are that these connections are occurring, what are the connections. Parent-teacher conferences are probably in person.
So another example might be a parent engagement event that the provider holds, and obviously that would also get them points on the Colorado Shine rating process.
Great. And so that arrow might actually be better off facing the other direction.
Yes.
Let's do that. Let's rotate that one.
But it's also a time where the provider can get good feedback from the families on their experience, so there could be lines both ways.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do a feedback line in the other direction.
So does everyone have a good understanding of what we're trying to do here, is kind of trying to draw the lines between the different people and entities, and the parent, families and children is sort of the most indirect out of all of these, but obviously, the council is connected to the providers, coaches are connected to the providers, navigators are connected to the providers. So wanting to map out kind of the communication and activities that go between entities and people, and vice versa.
Great. What kind of connection are we looking at between families and children in informal care? Because sometimes those.
So they could sometimes be neighbors, family members. So it's kind of a different connection.
Yeah, let's see. Again, let's see, neighbors. We could go both directions. Neighbors,
I'm wondering if some of these arrows should just be double arrows.
Double arrows?
I'm wondering if many of these arrows should be double arrows on
Have an icon
both sides.
They don't, so I'll have to do two arrows next to each
Okay.
other.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I wish that's good feedback to develop.
So again, remember that Leo usually does this in person, like on Post-it, giant Post-it paper, so it's a little bit harder in a technical document. So thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah, I can once again, this might be maybe one good opportunity, super quick, I can show as far as kind of what we're going for here. again. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
This folder. This is kind of what they typically look like in person, which is coming up here momentarily on your screen. There we go, sort of there. All right. This is what they typically look like. And normally, when it permits, we have you all in the room, and we're sort of doing it ourselves. Or even better, we give you the markers and have you do it yourself. And we just kind of patrol. But since this is sort of a telepresent community, I have taken it on myself to sort of digitize this process, and thus we are doing it this way. So I apologize for the somewhat limited functionality. I'm kind of limited by what this application will allow. So
yeah,
I will.
Doing great.
All right, we're gonna. I will do a dual directional arrow where it makes sense.
Okay, great. So why don't we move on to some of the more concrete connections we have by scooching over to the middle, maybe.
Great.
And what do people want to start with?
So these could be. What about between the? Do you want maybe start? Well, maybe start between providers and ECCs,
Sure.
And through whom those interactions go, or I'm open for suggestions. Sorry.
Yeah. So why don't we start with the navigator and the participating providers? So what would the connection look like between those?
And I just know that that's going to be a multi-directional arrow.
I'm going to let the silence sit until somebody speaks up.
So navigators are working with providers regarding different grant opportunities. Is that kind of?
Yeah, maybe they're outreach and recruiting.
Yeah, outreach.
Maybe they provide some TA.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to specify?
Oh, goodness. Chrome just died on me randomly, so I imagine that means that we're about to lose our...
Oh, we can still see it right now.
That's disappointing.
It looks to me like the screen is frozen. Like, so if you're moving anything on the screen, I'm not seeing it. So.
Okay, we're getting it back up. 1 second.
Yeah, I think you might have to share it back with me again.
Okay. I'm going to excuse you, and then I'm going to do it again.
Technology.
Great. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Anything else that navigators really directly interact with providers about? And we don't have to be too specific here because we have a lot of other bullets.
Yeah, this is almost like, almost, though they aren't necessarily so far, it would be good. These are almost like more like verbs. How are they acting? What are they doing?
So maybe like providing support. Is that more action-y?
Mm-hmm.
Like outreach, TA, and support.
Yeah, providing outreach, TA, and support. That sounds good.
I'll just replace what I have.
And then what are the providers kind of doing back to QI navigators? I don't know.
Yes, that's important.
Hopefully calling us back.
Being engaged, maybe. Isn't that one of our key metrics is level of engagement?
Yes. And with some, it's harder than others.
Yes, yes.
Great. And so these kinds of interactions are going to also be, I'll just throw in some extra metadata, which is going to be over the phone and probably emails, largely.
Phone, emails. Do a lot of you, do your navigators do on-site visits, or is it really primarily phone, email?
We do a lot of on-site.
Okay. So we can say on-site as needed. And Chrissy also said spending requests. So that is kind of a two-way street as well. Spending requests are submitted usually by the provider, although some councils, I think the provider doesn't submit the spending request, right? It's either the navigator or the coach. But all three of those can submit spending requests on behalf of the provider. Correct. Great.
Shrink this one down a little. There we go. All right. Fantastic. And so would a QI navigator be connecting with an informal care provider at all? Ideally.
I don't know other people's thoughts on this, but with the new kind of way that things are being set up in the OEC funding streams where it's only level 2 sites who are getting access to the QI program, it seems like the resource and referral agents or licensing specialists, which are actually both missing from this group, can you know, are really the ones supporting level 1 and informal care. Is that sort of what we think is correct? R&R people who could be navigators, right? They're still navigators, but maybe they're paid for under R&R, are the ones supporting level 1 and informal care. Is that sort of how we're thinking about this?
And we offer them to join us at different trainings and things like that if we know who they are. But with informal care, sometimes we don't even know who all those people are.
Yeah, and it does seem like, you know, some councils have specialized funding for informal care and some don't. And so that's probably going to drive if the navigator or maybe a different type of position is interacting with informal care, but certainly they could interact with informal care.
All right. Great. I wish we had a tenuous arrow.
Yeah, like a dotted line arrow.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we have been thinking about this pretty centrically on OEC and its programs, but we, you know, EC Connect is actually more than only supporting CDHS funding streams, and so let's think broadly about how we wish this would work. So if we had funding to support informal care, who would be the ones really reaching out to those people? Would that be the navigators? Would it be other types of coaches, grant leads, R&R specialists who maybe are also navigators?
For us, it'd probably be whoever happens to run across them. It could be any and all of those people, depending on how we run across them. You know, but that doesn't mean we couldn't set up a, you know, a standard operating sort of procedure that says, hey, if you find out of informal care, please, this is who you tell, so we can reach out to them.
Yeah.
The way it currently exists is there'd be no way to record that because there's only licensed providers in there.
That's actually not true. There are informal care providers in Sugar currently.
For every council?
They're not all there. They're not all there because we don't know who they all are, but there is a type of account record which is for informal care. And it does not sync with sales.
There they all are.
Power of databases.
Great. So I just put a simple employees between the director's primary contacts of licensed providers. Let's see if there's anything else that goes there. That's probably a pretty simple connection. Do we want to connect? So is there a connection other than maybe employees that these need? Because I could almost leave the employees out.
Yeah, maybe just to keep it clean, you could leave the employees out.
Okay,
Of that.
I will do that. Is there? Can we think of anything else that should be there?
With the navigator, well, they're very well connected with all three of the systems. I don't know if we want to add that in there.
Yes. Let's do that. I want to scoot all of those folks over just a hair so we have a little more room. I can actually grab everything. Excuse me for just a second here. They're migrating. All right. So that might give us enough room. I move this over.
So we all knew there were a lot of relationships in early childhood. I think this map is helping display that.
All right, so how are they related to the EC Connect app? And then should I draw some independent arrows for the other databases?
Sure. I mean, what do you all think? What is the navigator's relationship to EC Connect?
Marriage.
Marriage? Yeah. I was thinking they're like the master of the EC Connect app. They're kind of the first line of contact.
Master of...
Yeah, maybe married is a good analogy because there's some great things and some not so great things, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. And from the EC Connect app, what do they get? What do they get back?
Information.
Great.
All right.
Maybe business process?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, this is Phil. I was going to say something along the lines of, you know, not just information, but sort of a overall status snapshot, like, you know, how many hours were allocated in this area of coaching, or you know, which providers are receiving the most, you know, touch.
Yeah.
Sort of like those overall, sort of like what you said, their business processy, like components.
Yeah, and maybe like target lists for outreach efforts.
Yeah.
So who should I be contacting and when are people rating, and you know, those kinds of important target lists, maybe under status snapshot. And maybe we don't need separate arrows to the other systems, or what do you guys think? Do you want separate arrows to QRIS and PDIS?
In my case, that's definitely a reality.
Okay.
All right.
So maybe we can do PDIS first. So what are QI navigators doing with PDIS?
In my case, again, it's supporting providers to be able to function in the system and understand it. So it's providing technical assistance to providers, really.
Mm-hmm. Are the navigators able to get information?
Early care and learning people.
Yeah, maybe it's less of to providers and more of to individuals, right?
It's definitely on that individual level.
Yeah. Okay, and are we able to get information from PDIS? Do people feel like they can get information from PDIS?
In terms of they can get some information out of Colorado Shines, out of QRIS.
So not from PDIS directly?
Not directly.
Okay.
You can email them and ask them for information, and they might give you some information, and we've done that too. But generally, from the system, the database itself.
There's a PD team. Yeah, so we have a PD team. Let's see, where are they?
There they are.
Yep, PD team from CDE is a little person. And so the little person will provide information if you ask for it, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of like in between.
Yeah, they support PDIS. And this is where we're hoping to pull in more data from PDIS to EC Connect for business analytics and trend analysis. And so we're trying to work through some non-technical ways of doing that with PDIS that also don't violate all of their very important data sharing security issues. So that is a wish list item at this point. Anything else with PDIS? I think obviously there's credentials and things like that that our staff need to be participating in PDIS. Maybe we could just put a little bullet under PDIS for that.
Great.
Set of relationships.
Looks like with staff credentials.
Yep.
All right.
So it's kind of all those levels of the formal education, the training, and the experience, and then which wraps into the credential.
Mm-hmm. I'll make a note of that. You don't have to worry about that yet. And then QRIS, what's the relationship between QRIS and the navigator or provider? I guess it's really navigator at this point, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they assist with the rating process?
Well, and they assist with the TA for information the provider needs to be putting in their profile, etc.
Yeah, I'm thinking like data quality, even, you know, ensuring, hey, did all the information get to from point A to point B? And maybe a little bit more of the directed, you know, possibly providing some insight on like, you know, hey, all of the, you know, it's common to see this piece in the Colorado Shines rubric to not go so well, so make sure your evidence documentation is solid in that area.
Yeah, almost like tips and tricks for documentation.
Yeah, that's it.
Our QINs actually don't do that. Our coaches do that.
Yeah, I say that, you know, in our situation, we've put a clean line between levels 2 and 3 to 5 around coaching and navigating. And navigating's typically been below, and coaching's been above. Not that that's always a absolute clean line, because a navigator could assist with some components of it, but the coach is who I really pay to know 3 to 5 and support.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of a delineation. I don't know, from our perspective, what happens is like the little technicalities, so not the content, but the technicalities are sort of handled by the navigator, and the content is generally handled by the coach. And there's some cross-training on both of those, but so I don't know if there's a way we could say assist with technicalities of the rating process and kind of the timing of things, and then coaches are really facilitating the content expertise.
Okay. So would that be directly to the QI expert or to the...
So maybe where you have insured data quality, we can, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that actually, because a lot of QRIS data is self-reported. So I don't know if we want the navigators to be responsible for ensuring all of the data quality for the QRIS. What do you guys think about that?
Ensuring that data exists in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Phil probably wants us to be ensuring that all the data is quality, but I don't know if I feel
Yeah, you know, I think the first step is just making sure there's an awareness that, hey, there's this other field I need to fill out, or make sure I click that, you know, submit button and not this one, and, you know, some of that, you know, just knowledge and awareness of that QRIS system.
So maybe where you have insured data exists, we could say, assist with Colorado Shine's profile and technicalities of rating process. Does that work?
Yes. Assist with
Colorado Shine's profile and technicalities of ratings process.
Shine.
And it looks like Pam is signing off. Thanks, Pam, for being with us.
Sorry, I missed the second part.
Sorry. And technicalities of rating process.
And I think this is where we're starting to see what that QI Navigator really, at least my understanding of what they do, which is they know these three, you know, legs of the stool of you know, the Colorado Shine system, which is EC Connect and PDIS and QRIS. And because they know each of those systems, they know how they all work together and fit together as a framework for improving the quality of whatever provider they're working with.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then does the navigator get anything back from QRIS? So I know there are a lot of dashboards and stuff in Salesforce. Are navigators using those, or are they really relying on EC Connect at this point?
Our
I know one
QINs look at the reports. Our QINs look at the reports to see, you know, the status overall of level 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Great. So I think we get reports, and we also get the capability to log into the dashboard as the provider site. So that is helpful. So there's like a functionality there where navigators can log into QRIS.
Okay.
Although actually maybe that got taken away. Is that true?
No, it's still there and it's critical.
Okay, great. Good. I think there was something about the fact that maybe navigators don't have permission to edit the actual applications, but they can log in and view what's happening, right? Because they used to be able to edit.
They can't click the little buttons that say that piece of the application is complete anymore. Only the program can do that.
Perfect.
And some point I'll declutter this whole area.
Okay, no worries. All right, so we have 1 minute left. So I think our next step is just kind of cleaning this up, or maybe Leo, would
Absolutely.
you like to?
Our next steps are to clean this up, and we're going to kind of do this process tandem with the interviews and hopefully some observations. So I look forward to doing that, and we will share the final version of this document back with the group and get feedback.
And I think the Sugar Advisory Group and Data and Evaluation Committee, those who are available, you know, we're regularly scheduled now to meet every 2 weeks. So this was actually not one of those meetings. So I believe we are scheduled to meet next week. So I'm going to talk with Rick about using that time to start the glossary process. I think that will really help us as we go through the discovery phase. And then the only other thing is that, you know, we are looking forward to seeing all of you at the ECLA meetings coming up towards the end of the month. And we will have some time at those meetings to discuss the quality improvement plan and a few other, we're going to be having a little mini training on evaluation plans in preparation for the RFA and a few other things. So it'll be a great couple days. And of course, we have the Rocky Mountain Early Childhood Conference happening next week, which is pretty unbelievable. So if any of you will be there, we will see you there. So is there anything else anyone would like to close out with?
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for taking all this time. We really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday.
You too. Bye.
Thanks.